Talking Cursive, what, 4 years old, 3 years old?
Yeah, opened 2019, established in 2017.
It's not often, maybe it is in breweries, I don't know. It's not often to see such depth in staff right out of the gates with any like food business, especially a brewery, I think, in our area, like Talking Cursive had, because I feel like from the get-go, there was like a marketing person and there was this person. And that was like a little unusual in a good way, unusual. So because of that, I usually always just reach out to Andrew and like, hey, you guys want to do this event? Hey, you want to do this? And he's like, this person does it, or whatever.
Yeah, Alexis is our front of house manager is definitely taken over the like planning aspect of events and whatnot. Andrew still keeps the like beer events going, but it's kind of that's more of a joint effort as far as like our beer dinners and our brunches that we've been doing. That's mostly Alexis.
Gotcha.
It's a collaborative effort, but she's kind of the one spearheading that going forward.
It's just really interesting to see like a local business in the first few years that has that much organization, I guess. It's great.
Yeah, that's a pleasure to hear.
Real business.
Yeah. It doesn't always feel that way, in the midst of it. So it's nice to hear it from the outside.
All right, so you brought some beer.
I did. I brought our newish lager that we tapped over the weekend, and we were going to put out an announcement later this week about it.
Okay.
It's called Crash Into Me.
Cool.
Let me
get some glasses.
Going off of something based off the Onondaga Parkway Bridge, and just kind of making it as like an everyday beer drinker's beer, an everyday man, everyday woman's beer.
Willow Rock cups and a Talking Cursive beer.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're good friends of ours, so as long as next time they come in and use TC glasses. So we were going back and forth on the name. We had come up with, we were going to do like Parkway Pils, but it wasn't quite a Pilsner. And then we ended up deciding like kind of Stuck Truck Lager was one we had for a little bit. And then Alexis came up with Crash Into Me, with the subtle Dave Matthews reference too.
Yeah.
And then that kind of stuck. We came up with the name like probably 3-4 weeks ago.
Okay.
Had the beer, in the tanks ready to go. And then yesterday with the most recent truck hitting it, we're like, all right, well, we have to announce it today. So it kind of wrote itself.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
So, yeah, just a new house lager. We're using it in-house for ourselves, but also a lot of accounts are taking it and kind of rebranding it. Angry Smokehouse just picked one up.
Oh, cool.
We did it with the Village Tavern over in Marcellus. They picked some up.
Is that really like, do you all get a lot of calls for, I won't say co-branding, but for...
it's kind of like contract.
Yeah, contract.
Yeah, we've done it a couple times. We just did one with our Crispy Girls. We did that with Crazy Daisies. They came in and brewed with us about a month and a half ago.
Like they're going to go through a shit ton of beer.
Yeah, exactly. Especially going into the, their busy time. Well, their only time of the year, really.
Yeah.
So that's going to come out right for when they open. Talking Crazy is what they're calling it. We just did something with the Craftsman over in Manlius, or Fayetteville, rather.
Okay.
That was a apricot oat ale. We've done a couple other ones in the past. Something with LDs on the river.
Okay.
Up in Fulton, Oswego, I think. So kind of fit our accounts that have really always worked well with us, and then try to give them something that they can put their name on.
Yeah.
And kind of like help each other out in that way.
Yeah. All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Crash Into Me.
So it's just 2-row and a little bit of honey malt for a little background sweetness.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. Huh. It's like a little like not sour, but like it like kind of it kind of hits you in like the corners like a sour beer does a little bit.
Yeah, like the dryness kind of comes through a little bit. Definitely just like.
But the front is like sweet, and then the back end of it kind of like bitters out a little bit.
Yeah. A little lemony. We used sapphire and pearl hops in there.
Okay.
Very lightly hopped. Just kind of one of those easy drinking, but also easy to make kind of beers.
Yeah.
Some of my favorites.
That's really interesting. I found that to be the thing that I noticed most about Talking Cursive beers is that they are easier drinking beers.
Yeah.
You know,
We try to make something for everyone too. You know, you got more of our classic English styles, like our ESB and some of our Belgian styles. But then, you know, everyone wants the hype beers too, you know, the heavy dry hops and the heavy fruited IP or sours.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So I'm curious about a couple things with you. One of them is where you come from and why are you here and all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
So the other thing I'm curious, and the thing I want to talk about most, because you're about to go down to it, and that is is it the New York State Brewers Convention? What is it?
Yeah, the New York State Brewers Conference, put on by the New York State Brewers Association.
Are you all submitting beers for that?
Yep. So I brought 4 of the ones that we submitted. I actually got the list this morning just so I was prepared.
Yeah.
So last year we won silver in traditional lager for Crispy Girls. So we resubmitted that. We resubmitted its sister beer, Crispy Girls After Dark, which is a Czech dark lager. Stack Keys, our newest hazy. Nimo Elvis, our double IPA. Rhubarb Raspberry Pie in the sour category. We have a Belgian table beer that we did with Karuba fruit. Very lightly fruited in the other Belgian category. Our Oktoberfest, a barrel-aged barley wine that we took out of a port barrel that was from a Wera that then Old Home Distillers took and did their brother's cut in that port barrel, and then we got it right after them.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm really happy with how that turned out, and I'm anxiously excited to see how that is received by the judges. And then finally, a beer that I made with my friend Jack Droppa out of Burlington, Vermont, Trail of Angry Otters.
Okay.
Which was it started off as a steam beer with a little bit more darker malts. It kind of transformed a little bit more into like a Kentucky Common. It's kind of a little amalgamation of styles.
Yeah.
But
that's pretty interesting.
That was a fun one too.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's just all the New York State brewers that are part of the Brewers Association out in Albany for 2 days of kind of breakout sessions. A lot of sponsors like yeast talks, dry hopping practices. There's more behind the scenes finance and marketing and HR kind of things. But cool. Just a really good networking event.
Yeah, for sure.
So
yeah. So who are the who are the judges that are judging all the beers?
They're pretty like brewers. I believe you have to be BGCP certified, which is just the certification program by, I think it's put on by the U.S. Brewers Association. But just some content creators, other beer writers.
Content creators?
Well, yeah, I mean, in the sense of people that, like someone like you could get certified and do the judging.
I hope not. I genuinely hope no one like me is down there judging the beer that you spent time creating.
I think there's a far-reaching umbrella of kind of who's in there.
Really?
A lot of people just in the industry.
Yeah.
So
I was like, I'm curious. I'm always curious because I know what that is in wine and spirits. It's like all over the place. I'm sure there is like one or two for spirits, but the spirits there's like 100 different, grading authorities, so to speak, out there. But I never. The only thing I've ever heard of in beer is the New York State one. So I was trying to think of, and I haven't researched it yet. But what are those? Is there a deeper? So they're more prestigious, I guess.
Yeah. So there's the big nationwide one is the Great American Beer Festival.
Oh, okay.
And the other there's the World Beer Cup, which is probably one of the highest end ones.
Oh, really?
The New York State, this one, and the awards will be on Friday evening, is the largest state-run competition.
Okay.
There's a couple other nationwide ones, a couple other state ones.
Yeah.
There's a few international ones. I believe GABF takes international submissions too.
Oh wow.
But I think there's a lot more state-run events. And then you can even go down to the homebrew level, and there's homebrew competitions for
really?
For people all over the states.
That's cool. Is that how you got started in making beer?
So I homebrewed a little in college, And then after college, my parents actually opened a restaurant in Bridgewater, Vermont, right by Killington. So I worked there for a little bit, kind of tending bar, serving tables, and then ended up in the kitchen and learned to cook for about 2 years.
How old were you when they did that?
Right out of college, so 21, 22.
How old were they?
I might get in trouble for this, but late 40s, early 50s.
Okay. That's cool.
So
did they come from food service?
No, they just enjoyed going out to restaurants. It was kind of a dream of theirs. Cool. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad had a commercial construction business in White Plains, New York.
Okay.
Where we grew up.
All right, that makes sense.
So
the restaurant leap isn't too far.
Yeah. So we grew up. I grew up skiing at Killington. It was a place that was always dear to our heart. Okay. So right after I graduated from high school, my brother and mom moved up full time. Well, my dad kind of wrapped up his business. Mm-hmm. They opened an inn and restaurant. I started to help them out. Things didn't work out as best as they would have hoped. Yeah. So I transitioned. I was trying to just find something else to do while I figured out what to do with my actual degree. Yeah. Biology.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to do like animal biology and wildlife rescue.
Oh, that's cool.
It's kind of where my head was at. Yeah. But it took a little bit to figure out what I really wanted to do. And ended up reaching out to Long Trail Brewing, which was right across the street from our restaurant, trying to see if they had anything in the kitchen or just serving beer. Well, I was thinking I would ski bum for a little bit for another winter.
Yeah.
And they had an opening in the back, and I just kind of fell into the team there. And then I was there for 8.5 years, right up until COVID.
Brewing at Long Trail? Yep. Holy shit.
Yeah, from a team of probably 10 to 11 brewers, doing a couple 100,000 barrels a year. And then COVID hit, and kind of looking for a change. Wanted to do something a little more small and kind of have more creativity. Yeah. I had actually come out here with my my wife at the time, right after our son was born, because our parents are from Kaz.
Okay.
And Talking Cursive just opened up. It was like a week or two before their first anniversary. And I just stopped in, said hi, chatted with Andrew a little bit. Went home. We were, had always thought about moving to the Syracuse area, or at least like somewhere out of Vermont.
Yeah.
And I saw that Andrew was looking for somebody to take over the brewing process, and kind of just reached out. And I started in August of 2020.
That's cool.
And I've been here since.
Yeah. So. My uncle and aunt used to live in Burlington. They lived there for like 20 years, I think. Yeah. And they just moved out last year. Last year or the year before that, they moved back to Kentucky.
Okay. That's quite the leap.
Well, we're all originally from Kentucky.
Okay.
That's where I was born and raised till I was 13. Northern Kentucky, like Cincinnati area. Okay. And but yeah, still, yes, Burlington to Northern Kentucky is quite the leap.
Yeah. Just I mean, weather alone.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm sure just vibe of you know, the general population.
Yeah, very different. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so, and I forget if he's the one that got me onto Long Trail or what, but I stumbled upon it my first time ever having it. What was the name of the beer? They honestly, all the cans look the same.
I mean, they're big ones that, I mean, right when in college, before I could actually go out to the store and buy beer, it was always Keystone Light or Coors Light or. Yeah. But once I was going to the store, Blackberry Wheat was always a big one. Okay. And then their double bag, which is their German double alt. Okay. Because you could get a 6-pack of that and you'd be set for the night. Yeah. At the time, they were like $14 for a 6-pack.
This must have been an IPA or a pale ale, maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
Is there a beer called the Long Trail?
There's Long Trail Ale, yep. Yeah, which is an alt beer. Okay. Like an amber ale.
All right. Well, anyways, I stumbled upon them at I think not Deep Eddies. What's the name of the place up in on Onondaga Lake with the shark on top of the building? Oh my God, that's gonna drive me crazy.
I finally know a lot more places in the surrounding Syracuse area, but that's outside the realm of what I know yet.
Oh man, that's gonna drive me crazy. Anyways, it's a like very well known place. Okay. Small little like beach town sort of on Oneida Lake, and huge place, but it's a cool spot. But anyways, I had the beer for the first time there. Okay. And I was like, oh shit, this is a great beer. That's a huge brewery.
Yeah, it was It was in the top 50, like Brewers Association, like from production standpoint and from just kind of reach.
Did you know how big of a deal that was when you first started there?
I don't think so. I think it was kind of like craft beer was really starting to pop at that point. Like Long Trail had been around. They started the year I was born. Okay. So they had been around for 22 years by the time I started. I knew you could get everywhere. It felt like a cool place to work, but it wasn't really until a couple years after when I started to really learn more about the industry, and then a lot more smaller craft breweries popped up that I was like, okay, this is actually this is pretty cool. This is a pretty big deal. And then I mean, after about a year or so, really kind of learning more about the production side, because it's completely different than making beer in your garage.
Yeah.
I guess not nowadays. Most people, like some of the smaller pop-ups, some of them are just glorified homebrew setups, or you can buy a pilot, essentially the same thing that some of the breweries around here use as a pilot system for your garage. Depending on how deep you want to go.
That's wild.
But at that point, I realized there was no turning back.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty interesting. So what was that? I mean, what were some of the big things that you've learned? I mean, that's a really big deal to go from like a brewery of that substance to then here to Syracuse to Talking Cursive. So I mean, what were some of those things that like you feel like you've learned? I mean, do you talk to other brewers in the area where it's like you've got a leg up on so many of them because you were at such a massive operation?
I think everyone has, like, if there's one thing I learned, it's like everyone has learned the same things differently. So I've never felt like it was a leg up. More so like just a different way to think about it or a different way to do it. There's a lot I had to learn about brewing on a more of a small scale, and not having kind of the ability to kind of fix small issues very easily. Like we could always, if something was wrong with one batch, kind of tweak it on another batch and blend them together. Whereas you kind of are pigeonholed in a smaller setup. It's like, well, this is where is it? Can we use this, or is it going down the drain? If anything, like just the mindset of like time management and just kind of like planning out the day. I think actually starting in a kitchen setup and learning how to cook like on a line really helped me for that kind of production standpoint. Just from like, okay, here's what you have to get done during the day. What's going to take the longest? Start there, get those things moving, and then you can kind of pick away at the little things. Definitely kind of like a mise en place kind of mindset.
That makes sense.
So, but there's a lot that is a crossover, but there's definitely, I think the regional breweries, I mean, there's still some that are still hanging on, but I think that's kind of, at least in the last 5 years, has definitely really seemed to been the change in the craft scene. Everyone's got the local places they rather go as opposed to going to the store to buy something like Long Trail or for examples around here, like you still have people that are going to go buy something like Southern Tier or Saranac and stuff like that, and they're still even bigger than New York, but a lot more people, if they want to go get a beer after work, they're going to go to their local brewery, and it's not hard for pretty much any town. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, there's so many of them here in Syracuse nowadays, especially Central New York. I'm kind of the opposite. I mean, I hate to say that as Eat Local New York, but the Eat Local New York guy, but I definitely don't drink as much as I used to now that we've had our son, who's, he's 4 months old. So like, I'm really cautious about, not getting a buzz on, because especially at night, if I've got to go up and pick him up if he's crying or something. But I'm really into like the branding and like label designs and stuff, and just like kind of that feeling that it gives me. Summer's coming around, so I know I'm going to be a Sierra Nevada, or a Long Trail purchaser. That's just what I'm going to get, because it's like summer and bonfires and grilling out and Sierra Nevada. And so maybe that's just great on their branding. I don't know, but I also don't find too many pale ales around here, which that's my beer of choice.
Okay, yeah. There are definitely, I would be shocked if you talk to anybody that was actually in the beer industry that wasn't like, if I'm gonna go get a couple beers to bring home or drink cooking out or hanging out outside, that wouldn't say something like PBR or
Yeah.
around here Utica Club or
Right.
you know, they have their macro brand
Yeah.
as opposed to being like, well, I'm gonna go get a 4-pack at Talking Cursive and take it home. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that's just me. I mean, I love seeing like local beers at Wegmans and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love seeing that kind of stuff, even though now more and more as I learn about distribution, I realize how much of a pain in the ass that is for them to be in the Wegmans and
Yeah.
Tops and all those stores.
the hope with that kind of stuff is that you get people that are interested in trying it because they've heard about it and see it in their local store,
Yeah.
pick it up, like it, and then make the trip to
Yeah.
come to your actual physical location and
Yeah.
then have beer there, have food there,
Yeah.
and hang out for a little bit and tell their friends about it.
Yeah.
I think is the real market.
Yeah. I don't think that happens. Is the secret.
I know, unfortunately, yeah.
I don't know. I could be wrong, but I don't think that happens.
You have a lot of brand loyalty too.
Yeah.
Especially with like local breweries.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you have people that, you know, we have our own, you know, regulars that come in all the time and they still go out to other places, but where they're,
Yeah.
you know, if they had to pick one out of the, you know, 5 or 6 local places,
Yeah.
they'll come here. It's not that they don't like the other places, but
Right.
they like Talking Cursive. And they
Yeah.
have people that, well, they prefer to go to Willow Rock or Middle Ages or,
Right.
you know, 315, Full Bore. Like
Yeah.
everyone's got their regular crowd
Yeah.
and their loyalists.
Yeah. So what's it been like for you over the past, 3 years, at Talking Cursive, going from, coming from such a huge brewery to then, Talking Cursive, and then now 3 years later, what's like, what are some of the bigger changes that you've noticed?
I've learned a lot about my particular like style and like stylistically like what I like to make and kind of where my creativity lies. A lot more of like tweaking processes in the sense of getting something consistent, trying to read the market and see where things are going. The thing I've definitely have gravitated and loved the most has been just the community, especially in Syracuse, but also just in New York.
Yeah.
And kind of working with everybody else in the area and learning things from them, or being able to teach, like bring something to the table when we have a conversation.
Yeah.
So last year, at the beginning of the year, at the end of 2021, I had talked with Andrew about like, all right, let's do a year of collaborations. Let's try to do one a month.
That's cool.
Get somebody in, or we go somewhere, but
Yeah.
kind of, and the way most beer collaborations work, it's like you do one here and then you do one there. It's kind of, you get 2 out of it. It's a little bit easier
Yeah.
on the paperwork side as opposed to trying to like split the batch financially and whatnot. And one thing led to another, and we ended up doing 17 collabs last year.
Jesus.
With 12 different breweries, not counting the Ukrainian collab that we did at Myers Creek,
Yeah.
which was 20 Central New York breweries.
Yeah. That's wild.
So that was a lot of fun. Definitely exhausting by December.
Yeah, for sure.
So this year, the New Year's resolution, like we're going to focus on ourselves. And then,
We're never doing that again.
yeah. But now it's March and we've had Crazy Daisies in, we've had the Craftsman team in, we've had the Village Tavern in. We're doing more account collaborations.
Yeah.
We're still going to do some, brewery collaborations. We have a couple ideas in the works and a couple people that, we want to work with again.
Yeah.
And that's the fun part of it for me, is making those connections. And part of the reason I'm really looking forward to the conference this weekend is to see a lot of people that I haven't, I've talked to over the past year, but just haven't had the chance to see, because either I'm not at the festival or they didn't make it to the, one of the various festivals that happen throughout the year.
Yeah. That's cool.
And we're all just so busy. So
Yeah. So what are those styles that, like, creativity over the past few years, like what are those styles that you've kind of like honed in on or learned that, like, man, I really enjoy making this more than that?
I've definitely found that I've enjoyed trying, like, playing more with the yeast side of things and the different ways that yeast can present itself, especially the more that the yeast companies have kind of targeted certain styles of yeast and how they work. So one of the big things we did, I guess it started in 2021, was a new yeast from Omega called Cosmic Punch, which helps to unlock thiols which are like a aromatic compound mostly found in wine, like passion fruit, guava. But it was kind of this compound that was kind of not being released aromatically through fermentation. Through different hopping techniques and the use of that yeast, you can really kind of blow the aroma out the windows.
I never thought of it like that. Like never thought of it like a yeast or anything like that being able to pull out a different aroma. You know, in my head, I'm thinking of like cooking. If I want a flavor, I need to put more of that ingredient and not use a different ingredient to bring that out.
Yeah, and yeast is a pretty big driving force of that. Even traditional styles like Belgian yeast really kind of pushes the nose of more spicy and like phenolic flavors and aromas, like bubblegum, like licorice, and kind of that. Another classic is the Hefeweizen yeast, which is very clove and banana like. And then, you know, lager yeast is very subdued and kind of lets the malt shine through a little bit.
That's really interesting.
It's not, you can switch one ingredient and really make a different beer, but then the fun part is, you know, switching two ingredients very slightly or using them in a different way.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, like, last year well, first of all, let's get some more beer.
So I got more in this.
More of that. Like last year, I started helping out at Abbott Farms.
Yep.
And with their bar, and I started to get really interested in like cocktails and you know, mixology, so to speak. But I was really interested in like the traditional classic drinks. You know, I wanted to know, like, the first time a guy came up and I didn't have it on the menu, but he ordered an old fashioned, and I like looked at the recipe real quick on my phone and like shook the piss out of that drink. And he looked at me like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And I handed it to him, and he like kind of gave me this look and walked away. And then after he left, I looked it up. I was like, "Oh fuck, I was supposed to stir that." So
there's definitely, like, especially with traditional beers too, like those are the ones you really don't want to mess with. There's so much variance in modern beer styles, like an IPA, for instance. Like IPA was just one style 10 years ago. And now
there's 1,000 different versions.
It really the category needs to be split into something else, because you can't hand somebody an IPA and have them be like, "Oh, I know exactly what to expect," because it could be 100 different things at this point. Whereas like if you hand somebody like a Hefeweizen, for instance, to bring that back up again, like kind of you know what to expect going into it.
Right. So when you sit down to like make a beer, if you're thinking, okay, you know, in 2 months we need to release this Pilsner, are you kind of going back to, like, I've got cocktail books, so I'm going back to, I mean, not that I need to, but for like classics for some of them, but I'm going back to like, all right, what is the traditional, you know, French 75? That's a bad example, but you know what I mean? Like, how did they originally make this? And then that's what I want to do. Are you kind of doing that if you're making a Pilsner or whatever the beer is? Or are you kind of saying, all right, I've got the recipe. You're looking at the recipe and saying, what could I insert in here or change to make it different?
I guess it really depends on kind of what we're looking to do, like as our finished product. For something that we're like a traditional style, definitely kind of looking at, you know, a very traditional recipe, but then I also like to go back and try and see if I can find examples of very well-known examples of it. So for instance, like Oktoberfest, I did a lot of looking at very classic German examples, and even some American examples that kind of have always been around and that people really enjoy drinking, and kind of mesh those ideas together to make it our own. But there are certain styles where it's, well, this is how you make a Pilsner. Like for like you said old fashioned, my drink of choice is Manhattan. Like bourbon, bitters, vermouth. Like you don't really that's kind of it.
You don't change it.
You don't mess around with it. Whereas then you get into some of the newer styles, like, okay, well, here's our IPA base with like the same grains, but what hops do we want to use? Where do we want like what flavor profile are we looking at? So we want to add those hops here, or we want them there. What yeast do we want to use? That's kind of where the more play comes into.
Gotcha.
speaking of cocktails, one of the other things that I was kind of starting to do last year was look at kind of drinks and replicating them as a beer. So I did a strawberry margarita or a strawberry daiquiri sour.
Oh, cool.
I did a watermelon mojito. So trying to like think of a drink that everyone knows.
Yeah.
Almost to bridge the gap from those people that are like, well, I only drink cocktails. Well, like,
Yeah.
here's a cocktail that everyone kind of knows that, you know what to expect.
Right.
But here it is in a beer form. So that's been really fun too, especially trying to replicate a flavor.
Yeah.
In a very different way.
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh. So what do you think is like the biggest area of growth for the beer scene? Is it kind of doing that? Is it trying to find like, I mean, this is an extreme and bad example, but is it trying to say like, I'm going to make a beer that tastes exactly like a Twinkie? Or is it trying to,
boy.
Is it like going back to the roots of, hey, this is a, a lager, and this is a lager, and this is a lager.
I feel like the beer scene now is definitely at that fork in the road where a lot of people are like, we need to go back to like beer is beer.
Yeah.
And the other half is like, well, how much fruit and pastries and whatnot can I put in this beer, and how wild can I really make it?
Where do you stand on it?
Personally, I would rather make more traditional, like have fun with more traditional styles, and not go too kind of overboard.
Right.
But then, that's what sells. So it's kind of this inner demon.
I remember
of fighting back.
I remember sitting at a meeting like years ago. IBU was the first brewery in town that there was the first craft brewery that like got me into craft beer. And it's really hard to have a conversation with Big Mike and not get into craft beer. But that was the first craft brewery that like we would go to in town. And anyway, so long story short, I got to go to I think it was a New York Beer Association meeting at Willow Rock.
Okay.
And I went with Pedro and Big Mike. And I remember Big Mike saying, I forget what he asked everybody, but he basically said, they were talking about how the percentage was about to get bumped up for farm breweries. And then they were talking about like the challenge of that getting bumped up when you're trying to make your West Coast, IPAs and all that kind of shit. And he was saying, listen, no one in here wants to make that bullshit West Coast hazy IPA. Everyone wants to make this, but that is what sells, and so we have to make it.
Yeah.
And that's always stuck with me. It's like, having to decide, what are you going to do? Are you going to play to kind of what sells, or are you going to do what you want and hope people jump on board?
I think it was a lot easier to do a couple years ago, where you could kind of put your foot down and be like, this is what we're making. Yeah. One of my favorite breweries out in Denver is Bierstadt Lager House. Okay. They only make lagers. I'm not sure how long they've been around, but I'm sure in their first 2 years, like, when are you guys going to make an IPA? When are you guys going to make a sour? I'm like, no, we only make lagers. And now they're one of the most well-regarded breweries in the country. Huh. And people make like the Pilgrim. It's like going to Russian River or the Alchemist. Like, that this is all we make. Yeah. I feel like that'd be very hard to do now, unless you're really, really good at it, and you have the market and the location to be able to pull something like that off. Yeah. I think everyone has something that they take a lot more pride in making and are really good at making it, but you still gotta take from the other side to be able to do that pet project. Yeah. In a way. There's a lot of places. I mean, I've had some of those really fruited examples. That's not my cup of tea, but sometimes you have one of those and you're like, wow, that really does taste like a toasted coconut pie. Like, I don't know what else to say about it. I wouldn't want more than a can. I don't even want a full can of it, but you guys nailed it. Yeah. So
somebody just posted, I don't know what brewery it was I saw it on our Instagram account, but it wasn't a local one, but it was a New York State one. And it was, I think it was like a Cookie Monster.
I was going to bring that up. It was Tin Barn. Yeah.
What the fuck was that?
I believe it was blue cookie dough soft serve.
Was that a
birthday cake soft serve and blueberries?
That was a real beer. It wasn't a joke?
I mean, it's It's not April 1st yet, so I think it was.
Because I mean, that thing was thick as shit.
Yeah. It just, I can imagine the mouthfeel of something like that. But people are going to be lined up at the door for it.
That is insane.
And I'm not knocking it. Like I'm sure it tastes great. But
I mean, I am knocking it, but I am saying that seems ridiculous to me.
that's one of those things that makes me lose a little faith in the craft beer humanity.
Yeah, for sure.
But
Yeah.
there's a number of those breweries across the country that really dive deep into those styles. For our fruited sours, we've kind of hit the middle ground, and we really like hitting the flavor profile we're hitting, but not kind of going over the top. Those end up kind of being a packaging nightmare. You got to keep them cold. You should keep all beer cold, but that's not always the easiest thing to tell all your suppliers to do, or your package accounts and whatnot, or even the consumer at home,
Right.
Or drink it fresh. Like but
I was just especially now getting buying and selling alcohol. I've been thinking about that, and I've had to. I was just texting Tim. I was like, "How long is this? We tapped this keg. How long do I have before it goes bad?" And I was like, he told it was the hot whip. He's like, "Yeah, you've got about a month." I'm like, "Well, shit, I'm not going to sell all of this in a month. Not this month because it's like we're just opening, it's dead." But beer has a date. And
it does. We found, like, for instance, like the rule of thumb for IPAs is about 90 days. Okay. At least that's what I had always been told, and I kind of in my experience have found.
Yeah.
You get a drop off in the hop character, especially if it's not stored correctly or packaged. Like there's a lot of variables that go into it, but kind of 90 days is the general consensus. But we have some IPAs that are past that still taste just fine, but it's one of those things that some consumers see that and like they don't want to buy an IPA that's less than 2 weeks old.
Yeah,
and it's like I don't know. How do you keep up with something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how you do. I do have a can of Hot Whip in my fridge that's like a year old. And I was just thinking that might be a funny video to take like a fresh one and that year-old one, and then
make Tim drink them.
Yeah, I was thinking I would drink them. But yeah, make Tim drink them. The thing is, Tim would gladly do it and just laugh about it.
Yeah, Tim
would. So, what do you think is? What do you think is next in the world of beer? I'd imagine. Let's just assume it's regionally.
I mean, I wouldn't imagine using pounds and pounds of soft serve mix to make a blue beer that turns your tongue blue.
Is that really what they did? They put soft serve mix in?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
I've messed around with vanilla soft serve. Actually, let's utilize it in this one. Okay. So this is raspberry rhubarb pie. The sour we ended up entering.
Just as so I don't forget later, if you ever want fresh blueberries when blueberry season comes in July, Abbott's for beer, because they've got a shit ton of acres of blueberries, and like half of their crop always dies on the bush.
I will keep that in mind for sure. So this has graham cracker and cinnamon in the mash, kettle soured, and then rhubarb and raspberry, and vanilla soft serve.
Actual vanilla soft serve?
It's vanilla soft serve powder. Okay. Lactose free. We were using.
You know when I want to drink this beer? And I want to drink this beer when I have a hazy IPA in the other hand.
Okay. Go back and forth.
Yeah, that is my thing. I don't know why.
Okay.
It's all like this is like a perfect amount. Like about a half a can of a sour is great for me.
Yeah.
For my palate.
That's usually where I'm at too.
But if I have a hazy IPA and I'm drinking both at the same time, I could go all day long. Yeah. There was one time when I realized, oh shit, sours are low ABV. I could sit here and drink 12 of them a night and be fine. Mm-hmm. And then I started to get massive heartburn.
Yeah. Especially as they get more sour and sour.
Yeah.
Yeah. They it's definitely, I mean, I find it with IPAs too, but like at a certain point you just get mouth fatigue.
Right. What's the ABV on this?
4.2.
Okay. It's not high, but it's kind of high for a sour, right?
It's kind of with a lot of the fruit sours now are usually around like 5 or 6.
Oh, really?
Our Exoplanet series, which is kind of our more modern take on our sours, is 6.2, 6.4.
Wow. I don't know what I don't know which beer it was. I saw it at Harvey's Garden. It was a sour. It was like 2-1 or 2-2.
Traditionally, like a traditional like old school German sour, like a Berliner Weiss, are usually very low alcohol.
Okay.
They've kind of bumped up in the modern days, just because that's kind of what the consumers have been wanting. I find it also helps with the heavy fruit load to help kind of give it a little bit more balance.
Okay.
As opposed to just kind of the beer dropping out and it just being
Yeah.
a smoothie.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's interesting.
There's a lot more nuances to making like the fruited sours than just like picking fruits out of a hat and dumping them in. Because in my take on it, like you still want to know that you're drinking a beer.
Yeah.
You're still trying to target a certain flavor profile.
Yeah.
Instead of just like taking the kitchen sink of all the fruit and dumping it in.
So where do you get like the zip in this? Is it just from the fruit, or do you have to add something into it to get that kind of tang almost?
So we kettle sour it.
Forgive me.
Yep.
What does that mean?
So we take the wort, we do our mash, our grains and hot water, extract the wort out, give it a quick boil, and then I inoculate it with raw grain, which naturally has lactic acid in it.
Ah, okay.
And lactic acid producing bacteria.
Okay.
We'll let that sit for 24 to 36 hours in the kettle, and then boil it as normal after that, to kill off the lactic bacteria and then proceed with fermentation as normal. You also get a little tang from the raspberry,
Yeah.
which gives that a little zip, but the background is the...
So that pretty much if I'm seeing a kettle sour, I'm going to be getting that hit in the back of my mouth.
Yeah, you can get it too from kind of more of a traditional soured beer, which happens after, like during the like it's a mixed fermentation where you ferment with yeast and bacteria.
Okay.
A lot of the more modern sours are done
Kettle
in the
sour.
kettle,
Yeah.
because then you boil it afterwards, you kill off all that bacteria, and you have a little bit more of a stable product that is going to remain at that kind of tartness.
Yeah.
Whereas with more of a mixed fermentation, you can have variance depending on when you have it.
Okay. Yeah. That's really
A little different, like it's a totally different flavor profile.
Yeah. I've always wondered that. Like I see like Godzilla, for example, from Willow Rock is always kettle soured. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? I know it's a sour beer,
It's consistency.
Okay. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Because you're controlling it versus the other way, you're relying solely on nature, basically.
Yeah, you can essentially let it sour to a certain, you get a pH drop to make it a little more acidic, or to make it acidic, rather. So you can kind of target where you want it to stop.
Yeah.
And kind of really have consistency in that product. But more of the mixed ferm or wild fermented stuff, you get a lot more nuanced and kind of different levels of sour that can progress over time. Especially you can age those bottles on your own, or let it kind of sit in the barrel, or depending on where you're fermenting it, until you feel it's ready to go.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
So,
All right, so like you're a brewer, you know what you're doing.
I like to think so. If there's one thing I've learned, I think a lot of us in the industry would say that we all suffer from imposter syndrome. Especially, I think, like personally, like I kind of fell into it. Like I always had a passion for the science behind it. Like I said, I homebrewed a few times in college. Like,
and you're a scientist.
Now apparently, but there's definitely times where it's like, fake it till you make it, I guess.
Yeah.
And like nobody's figured it out yet, so I guess I'll just keep going.
I've started to have this understanding, or not understanding. I've started to think about recently what it means to be an expert in my field. And I'm 36. I'm going to be 37 this year, so I feel kind of old. And especially having a kid now, I'm like, what the fuck did we do? Like, why do we do this so old? My wife is 4 years younger than me. But I'm just like, to me, it's still not it's like still like a every other day realization that I'm not 25 anymore.
Yeah.
And although I still feel like, oh, I've got time to figure my shit out, but
Time goes by fast.
yes.
Yeah.
And so, and Nicole and I were talking about this yesterday. I have always looked up to other business owners, and especially restaurant owners, and like put them on a pedestal. It's like, here at Eat Local New York, we take small swings. Like like what we're standing in, what we're sitting in is like the biggest swing really financially that I've had to take.
Yeah.
I don't have to sign some massive lease on, and buy $500,000 worth of equipment, whatever the case is, like restaurant and brewery owners do. So I've always looked up to them. It's like, holy shit, you took this huge risk hoping this is going to pay off. And so with that in mind, I've always looked up to restaurant owners like a little bit more like, maybe one day I'll get to your level. And then recently I've been talking to a few of them over the past few months who I've gotten a little closer to, who are like, one of them owns a business that is doing fine, but they had to go get a second job in order to pay their bills.
To keep going.
And I was like, holy fuck. It's like no one is safe, sort of a feeling.
Yeah.
And so that has kind of snapped me into feeling like Eat Local New York is kind of like this, I'm having fun, I'm making, shows about food, to holy shit, I need to be the expert in this. Like, and not so much like I have to be, but almost like I can be the expert in this. Sort of a feeling, and I don't know if I'm explaining it as well as it feels in my head, but it's just kind of like this realization of like, we're in a relatively small area. There's not too many other people around here that do what I do. I mean, there are too many influencers in the world.
Yep.
But there's not too many people around here that do what I do to the same level, and so I could be the expert in this thing. And so that's kind of like helped me shift out of like I wouldn't say I had imposter syndrome, but I understand that, but I had more like, I'm just playing around syndrome, sort of, if that makes sense.
Like, and realizing now, like, okay, I got to dive deep or not.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, there's definitely that. I mean, Eat Local New York hasn't done shit in terms of like making it, like profitability. And, because we've got like the marketing side of the business where we manage marketing for people, content creation. We've got our side, our own social media stuff, the Eat Local card, all these different facets. And where was I going with this? I forget where I was going with it. I hate when that happens. That's another sign of getting older. We've had all these different things, but never one thing have we really like, we're going to be this, and
so like trying to find the niche,
that, but also, I don't know, just trying to be like right now, I know that if I put out like a series of videos for someone, like we just spent last week, we spent the whole day out in like Herkimer and Utica and Rome, and we filmed at 5 restaurants and like made 25 videos and 5 videos at each restaurant. I know that when I put those videos out for that restaurant, that it's going to do something for them. Like they're probably arguably going to see an uptick in, at the very least, followers on social media.
That's the goal.
Yeah,
right,
for sure. Actually, it just happened yesterday. We did or 2 days ago, we did the giveaway with Guadalajara. Mm-hmm. They got like 500 followers on Instagram. Now, hopefully they can capitalize on that and bring in more business, which they should, because I'm actually doing their social media.
Our neighbors.
Yeah, that's true. That's right.
When they opened, it was really hard not to get food every day. From there. I
said this to him. Luis's podcast is out today, this week, but if you look at just where I've spent the most money at one given restaurant over the last year, Guadalajara would be my favorite restaurant, just based on that one fact alone.
It was lunch a while for me, and then it was also like, oh, I'm working late. That's the easiest place to get takeout from, and I'll just take it home.
That's how it was when I lived in Texas. because there's like Mexican restaurants everywhere, and some of them had drive-throughs.
Oh God.
So it was very easy to like run through and grab some tacos really quickly that were like some of the best tacos you've ever had.
No, like a Taco Bell drive-through.
Right.
Completely different.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's how it was for me. So that would be dangerous if I worked in the same building as Guadalajara.
Yeah.
But no, I guess I'm as I've gotten older, it's kind of gone from over the past 2 years with Eat Local. It's gone from like we're having fun. Yeah, we're selling this card and we're doing marketing, we're making videos, to now it's like, hey, this is a business and we can do this sort of a thing. So I've kind of I think I'm kind of shifting out of the imposter syndrome a little bit, and now I'm like, okay, I should be the expert on this one thing.
Yeah.
Like we have the reputation, we should be it, Do you think there's space in like the beer world for there to be more like the place in Denver where it's like, hey, if I want an IPA, I know I need to go here. If I want a sour, I know I need to go here.
I think they're definitely. I mean, I think it's happening right now. Even like hyper local. Like
if you're gonna go out, let's just assume no one's listening to this. Very few are, but let's just assume nobody is. If you were gonna go out and get an IPA in Syracuse right now, where would you go?
I'd probably go see Keith up at UBL.
Yeah, duh, that's an obvious one. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I always forget about them.
Yeah,
they're like, yeah.
I mean, they're killing the hazy game.
Yeah.
That and saisons right now, especially after they pulled in Saul. Yeah.
Ooh, man, Saul is like my favorite, person I think in Central New York.
It was really like, so when I came on board at TC, it was Billy and Keith before me.
That's right.
Billy had left for Heritage.
Yeah.
Keith was still helping out Andrew until I started. So Keith was one of the first people I met.
I didn't know that. I didn't know Keith was there.
Yep. Kind of part-time while he was trying to figure out UBL.
Yeah.
And then he went and helped out Billy for a little bit while they were still, working out the kinks before they got their location up and running.
Yeah.
But one of the things I inherited from Keith and Billy was a Brett Pilsner that they did with Saul. So about a month after I started, we had Saul come in and we hand bottled about probably 5 barrels of beer over the course of almost 12 hours.
Wow.
And Saul was one of the cooler people I've met in the area.
Yeah.
I have run into him a couple times since then. He's just a busy guy. I was very excited to hear that he was
I know.
working with Keith.
The New York Golden Ale.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know what it's when you're if whatever you eat when you're really hungry is like the best thing you've ever had.
Yep.
And I feel like it's the same way whatever you drink at 8 a.m. And so going to the regional market and running and seeing his setup and then having that New York Golden Ale at like 7, 8 in.
This is the best beer you've had.
Yeah, like ever in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is. I wish that the craft beer scene was more like that, more like Saul's that existed, where they're just setting up at a random farmer's market and selling a few big bottles than 12 different breweries.
Yeah, and really having a hard time figuring out like where to go.
Right, and having to try and do everything.
Yeah.
And do you feel the same way? Or it's kind of probably tough because you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those questions that's probably tough to
to
come at as somebody like outside of the industry.
If you could snap your fingers right now and either be the head brewer at a massive like Long Trail or sit in a farmhouse all day and make small bottles that you sell at the farmer's market, which would you do?
Oh man, I don't know. I think if you're the head brewer at a place like Long Trail, you're really not on the floor. You're you're kind of right on the desk.
And you'd rather be on the floor?
Yeah, that's probably one thing that I kind of like doing it. It's kind of I feel every day's different. I'm always busy. Always have something to do.
Yeah.
I don't think a desk job would be good for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. If I could snap my fingers, I love the beer industry. I probably would have done something different.
Really?
Yeah, it's not the easiest. There's a physical toll You know, probably would have, maybe invested in crypto a little earlier or something like that.
I mean, everyone, if they could have bought Bitcoin at $1, would have
Yeah,
said
yeah.
I would have done that. But yeah,
No, I mean, all kidding aside, no, I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah.
I definitely like the smaller scale, having
yeah,
a little more hands-on and more of the ability to create, and come out with new things instead of just being like, well, we make these 4 beers,
yeah,
and then maybe once a year we come out with something different.
yeah,
So I guess, farmers market
yeah,
is where I would end up.
yeah. All right, so this is, you kind of just talked about it, but the final question that David Anastasio from Peachtree Sandwich Company told me I should ask every guest is, why do you do...
I missed their BLT,
I know.
man.
Oh, their BLT, yeah. Their fried chicken sandwich was great. It
Yeah.
was delicious. So was that fudge.
Their fudge was there. Then they had, you got a piece of fudge with every order, right? Yeah.
I'm sure he's gonna reopen because he's like started doing cooking videos now on the Instagram account.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah. So I'm sure the plan is to reopen one day.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So the question is, why do you do what you do?
Oh man. I feel like I say this every time, but like the community involvement, the people I've met on the journey. I just the people that I've interacted with and have conversations with, the ability to always be learning.
Yeah.
Like kind of like your conversation before about being an expert. Like you could be an expert, but I like the fact that there's always something new to learn about and always something new to try and do differently. Even if you have perfected one thing, there's always something new coming out.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. I mean, in terms of the community, we really do have, I don't know of, the only brewery in town that I know that people hate is Myers Creek. And I have no problem saying that because I'm one of those people. But in all seriousness.
Oh, I love those guys, though.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh, I fucking can't stand them.
Oh.
I don't think any of them, I don't know. Well, yeah, whatever. We'll talk about that off there. In the restaurant world, there's restaurant owners that kind of like shit on each other and just can't stand each other just for zero reason other than the fact that, like,
I think it'd be weird if there wasn't that.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. You do need some level of competition.
There's got to be a villain somewhere.
Yeah, and that's Myers Creek. And I know that there is. I know that there is healthy competition amongst all the breweries in town. But still, I've never heard from any of like the significant ones. Talking Cursive, Middle Ages, Buried Acorn, Willow Rock, 315, Full Bore. I've never, and I'm sure I've missed a couple, but I've never heard from any of them like, man, I really can't stand that brewer or that brewery or anything like that. Like everybody kind of pokes fun at each other a little bit for their individual beers, but no one's ever like vehemently against another brewery in town.
Yeah,
which I think that's really cool. I don't see that in any other like craft industry. Coffee, they kind of fight. Spirits, they kind of a little bit. But not in beer.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting.
I mean, I didn't really have that ability to. I mean, I met a lot of other brewers in Vermont when I was working at Long Trail and living there. But if you're not in Burlington, you're kind of isolated, and that's just the nature of Vermont to begin with.
Right.
But it still feels like the beer scene in just central New York and then just New York in general is like I haven't met a bad person.
Yeah.
I haven't met somebody that I haven't really been able to get along with.
Yeah. That's cool.
We're all, inherently competing against each other.
Yeah.
But we all want each other to do well, because if all of us don't do well, then nobody's going to do well.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Huh. That's awesome. Well, Paul, you said it all. Thanks for coming on, man.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Everybody who's listening, go out to Talking Cursive Brewing Company in downtown Syracuse, get some beer, get your Eat Local New York card, save $5 to spend $25 or more.
Yeah.
Good luck tonight, this weekend.
Thanks. Yeah. Friday night, you can watch on YouTube.
Yeah.
7 p.m.
Awesome.
So hopefully we take some medals home, but we'll see. Hopefully just anybody in central New York. But
yeah,
I know I know we're not the only ones that send stuff in. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Thanks, man.
of course.